Hi, and welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel, where we have yet another vintage tech review. We're looking at this fantastic military laptop, which was sent to me by Rob from my Discord channel, and I've been looking forward to playing around with this thing for a while. When I teased this in an unboxing video recently, I talked about how I always have too many projects on my to-do pile, and I might not get around to it for a while, but there was an outpouring of demands in the comments saying, drop everything you're doing and look at that crazy laptop. So all right, we're going to look at the crazy laptop. And I say laptop in only the loosest sense. This thing weighs 30 pounds. If you put this on your lap, you would probably be crushed to death immediately. This thing is probably classed as an occupational hazard and might be one of the major causes of workplace injuries in the military. So far, it looks like a fairly normal laptop computer. It's manufactured by DRS Technologies, who has made quite a few computers for various militaries around the world. I believe this particular one is from the UK. Now, the keyboard here actually comes completely out of the unit. It's connected with this serial cable here, so you can use the keyboard separately. We have quite a few interesting compartments latched down on both sides here. Some of them have anti-tamper seals, which we will probably be tampering with at some point in this video. Now the back is really interesting because all of the ports have these protective covers on them, and I believe this is partly for environmental shielding to keep water out if you're in a damp environment, but it's also partly for electronic shielding. I have heard that this thing might be tempest rated, meaning that you can't snoop on it using its electronic emissions. The metal shielding here helps keep stray radio waves from propagating out of the computer, out of any ports. We might see more of that later as we dig into the thing. Now, a lot of these are standard connectors underneath, like this is a regular old VGA port, but some of these are a little weird and they might cause me some issues, like the power. It's these weird 2-pin connectors and the pins are not labeled, so I don't know which one is positive and negative. This will accept both DC and AC, but again, the AC port has 3 pins and I don't know which pin is which, so I don't want to feed this the wrong thing, even if I can find these weird connectors. I do have one of the weird connectors. Somebody turned me onto this on eBay. I think these are an Amphenol product, and apparently there are about 30,000 different variations of these based on the size of the plug, the number of pins, the size of the connection, the shape of the interior, the shape of the exterior. Yeah, it's a mess. It's the military, so there's no standardization, or if there is standardization, it's really confusing and not super useful for civilians. I still don't know the pinout. I don't know which of these is positive and negative for the DC input, so we'll still have to open the thing up and try to trace that down. We have this little indicator area with some lights, and then it looks like there's actually an LCD screen behind it. We've got some inspection info here. It looks like this was tested in 2007. And I think this little front compartment opens up. All right, so we have our power, reset, brightness. We have some drives. We have a CD drive. We have a super disk drive. This looks like a single PCMCIA card slot. I still have a bunch of PC cards for wireless networking and whatnot. This, I think, is probably where the battery lives. There's nothing in there now. There are some chunky connectors in the back that look like power connectors. And then this might be a hard drive. It looks like there's some kind of a data port in the back here, and you probably want to slide in some kind of a sled with a SCSI drive. Not sure if this is SCSI or if they were using IDE. I think it's probably a little too old for SATA, but I'll have to look into that a little more. And you'll notice there's like this steel wool all the way around the opening of this bay that makes an electrical connection with the cover. So yeah, that is the tempest shielding that is keeping stray radio signals from getting in or out of this laptop. I don't know if that would shield it from an electromagnetic pulse. It's possible this is rated for nuclear war. I'm not really sure about that. I would suspect that other peripherals might not be happy if you had an electromagnetic pulse too close to this thing, but it's pretty cool to see that shielding built right in. The keyboard uses one of these weird micro serial connections. I hadn't seen these until recently when I came across these on some police laptops or tablets that I had. Yeah, it's really expensive to find this cable if you don't have one already. So if we take this cover off, there might be a release mechanism that lets us pop this out, and then I suspect the thing slides in half. We have one of these on each side, so I'm going to need to find some little Allen wrenches for those. Pretty standard military-style latching mechanism. It doesn't want us to tamper with this side. The other side we could tamper with, but yeah, we're going to go ahead and void both the warranty and the military top secret clearance here. And then one more little Allen screw right in the middle here, because reasons. This panel with the buttons is also connected back inside, so I should probably take that off as well. I also had to unplug the serial port, and then one of these little copper strips came off. Now, these are what make the electrical connections between the pieces of the case. So these are part of that tempest shielding, that RF interference shielding. Now, everything's packed in here pretty tight, and I don't necessarily need to tear it down completely, but I do want to get to that power supply input and figure out the polarity on that. I also wanted to figure out that hard drive connector, and it looks like it might just go to a regular IDE plug on the motherboard down under there. And there is a second IDE port, so I might be able to just sneak another IDE cable out of there into the drive bay and bypass that weird connector altogether. I'm trying to avoid taking the whole thing apart by snooping around in there with this USB endoscope camera. I did find a BIOS battery in kind of an inconvenient spot. Well, it wouldn't be a Save It for Parts video without one of the cats appearing on my desk to investigate and assist by putting cat hair into every crevice of the technology I'm working on. Isn't that right? Yeah, you're so helpful. You're going to lose all these little screws, aren't you? I just realized this Amphenol connector I have is slightly bigger than the one on the computer, so this is variation 8401 instead of 8407 or something. There's just too many of these. Military gear is always really frustrating because some clever contractor will always manage to convince the top brass that they need this special proprietary connector and they need 30,000 variations of this special proprietary connector. Each one costs $300. There's infinite tax money, right? So the taxpayers will just pay for stupid proprietary equipment on every piece of military technology. Why would we ever save money by using off-the-shelf components that you can find anywhere? All right, I think I finally have an angle on that power connector, so it looks like red. I think that's enough for me to just put some jumper leads on that stupid power connector on the back. And yes, I did try to get the power supply out, but it's one of those things where you probably have to start over here to get this module out. I can't even tell which screw to start taking out here. So I really don't want to rip everything apart because it's one of those things that's packed in there so tight it would be really difficult to get it all back in the right place. I picked up a new power supply. I may have shown this on an earlier video. The only thing I don't like about it is their choice to go with the pre-sun-faded smoker's lung color on the front panel. So this is what the power connection looks like. I've got some little pieces of plastic in there so my alligator clips don't touch. The upper right pin is negative. The lower left is positive, or A is positive and B is negative in this case. This thing is supposed to take between 18 and 32 volts. We'll just start low. All right, let's give it the juice. Well, we've got lights, that's always a good sign. No smoke yet. Hey, it's working. We've got a Pentium 3, that's newer than I expected. And that's a nice big flat screen, especially for this era. Yeah, it'll probably give me a keyboard error, and then we won't be able to get into the BIOS without putting it back together a little bit. I think I actually have to put the case back together here to get the keyboard on because that serial port connector is kind of part of the case. And system CMOS checksum is bad, so probably that CMOS battery that I found with the endoscope is no good. So I might have to do a little more excavation to get that battery out of there and replaced. I think it's just a standard watch battery. So the battery is kind of underneath this SCSI cable. It's pretty awkward, and then this cable is so rigid that I can't really bend it out of the way. I'm really trying not to damage this because I will never find replacement parts for this thing. You can take the whole case off, but then actually getting to anything within that case is essentially impossible. So it's like two different teams worked on the design of this, and one of them hated repair people more than the other team. I feel like there might be a way to slide the rest of this motherboard assembly out, but I haven't quite figured out how to do it. There's a bunch of fasteners over here, and then there's only a couple fasteners over here. There's kind of a weird locking mechanism that exists on this side but not on that side. It's really not obvious how to get the rest of this open. So I need some kind of flexible hook to get back in underneath that battery. And I was thinking dental picks, but then I thought, what about lock picks? This is a street sweeper bristle. These are great for making lock picks, or in this case, I think I can make it into a little reverse hook to get underneath that CMOS battery. Yeah, something like that. The surgery was a complete success. All right, we're trying this thing again. We're gonna try to enter the BIOS. I'm gonna go through here and just change the date, time, all that stuff. And we're gonna see if we can boot from a CD with this. Boy, the keys are really mushy. I don't really like that. They're definitely not nice clicky keys. Power supply is freaking out here. So this is too old to have any USB ports, or maybe they thought USB was too crazy and newfangled and it'd be a security risk. So I'm going to have to try to boot from CD. I used to own a decent collection of these antiques with various versions of Linux and whatnot on there. Most of them rotted. All of my burnable CDRs, CDRWs from the early 2000s just flaked away into nothing. So these are the only two versions of Linux I still own on CD. We have IcePack Linux 2 and Geeksbox Live CDs. And the power supply is freaking out again. Maybe I want a little more than 18 volts, or maybe I need more amps. I'm not quite sure what's going on with it. I can't actually go more than 3 amps on this power supply, so it's possible this is just drawing more than the power supply can handle. Hey, we've got Linux, so we can boot from the CD, and yeah, it looks like this is the installation CD, not a live CD. This is from back in the days when you didn't get both options on your installation media. I don't know if it'll actually run live here. It certainly won't install without a hard drive present. All right, we've got X Windows. Let's try that other CD because I think that one is an actual live distro. All right, so we've got this Geekbox open. Now, as far as I remember, this was for media playing, and it's been a long time since I've used this, but you can actually run video CDs or DivX DVDs, and it actually ejected the system CD here. So yeah, the purpose of this system, now that I think about it, was for playing your perfectly legitimate video CDs that you download in the early 2000s from perfectly legitimate websites. So I've been digging around in my parts bins trying to find enough to get this laptop set up and working with a hard drive and whatnot. I found some old hard drives, some laptop drives with IDE connectors, but I didn't have enough cables and whatnot, so I went over to Axeman Surplus. This is my favorite local store in the Twin Cities. All kinds of random junk, interesting electronic stuff, random parts that come and go. They always have something new, and they do have a lot of similar stock like computer cables and power supplies, but if you see something really unique that you really want, you'd better grab it when you see it because it might not be there next time. They even had a goat this time. Well, it wasn't Axeman's goat, it was a customer's goat, but that was still a new one for me. The goat even has its own Instagram, which I'll throw a link to down below if I can find it. Anyway, I was able to find a few parts at Axeman. I found a new IDE cable, and this one does not have the plug in it. So many of these IDE cables, at least the ones I have, are missing a pin, and I forget why that is, but they don't plug into the connector that this has that is not missing a pin. I also got this IDE to smaller IDE, whatever laptops use. So it took some fiddling, but I got the IDE cable for the hard drive unplugged from in here. Everything is packed in here super tight, so yeah, I actually had to take this part of the frame off and kind of scoot everything over, but now I think we can get another IDE cable in there. And there's no room for my adapter inside of the actual hard drive bay, so I might end up putting the hard drive in the battery bay for now. Yeah, we're having to modify a few things here. Nothing super permanent, although I might have to cut a little slot here to get the standard IDE cable into the drive bay. we've jammed a hard drive in the battery bay. We've connected that back to the IDE port. On the motherboard, we have run the power for that laptop hard drive over to the 5-volt rail on the power supply. Let's see if the hard drive works. In an interesting twist, it seems we already have Linux installed on this old hard drive that I just popped in here, and it's trying to boot. I'm amazed. If you put a Windows hard drive in a completely different system, it would just crap itself. But Linux is like, sure, okay. Okay, this has to be some kind of record for things going right with a computer project of mine. Completely random hard drive that I pulled out of my junk pile, random stuff from Axeman, popped it in this old military laptop, and it boots right up into Linux. We've got a desktop. This is amazing. This never happens. Things never work this well. While it's working, and before I screw something up again, we'd better try to do the most important thing you can do with any old computer. The number one thing that everyone in the comments is going to ask, can it play Doom? I assume it can, we just have to get Doom on here somehow. And that's going to be another little bit of a challenge because there are no modern inputs. There's no USB, we have no network card, we have a CD drive, so we could try to burn Doom onto a CD. We have that LS120 or Super Drive or whatever that is. I don't quite know what media that uses or where you find that media outside of a museum, but I would like to try to get this online, so I'm actually going to try the networking first. I think since we have the PC card slot, I can probably throw a wireless card in there, and I've got a bunch of those. And by a bunch of these, I mean I really have a bunch of these PCMCIA cards, probably an unhealthy number of these for a format that's been dead for decades now. I also have whatever this was that was around for 10 seconds. And I even have compact flash accessories. So I'm just going to start trying network cards from here until I get one that works on Linux. All right, second time's the charm. The Linksys card did not work, but the D-Link card seems to. Will it Doom? Yes, technically. The controls are really terrible. The frame rate is terrible. But, yeah, it will barely play Doom. Also, we have no audio for Doom because the audio plug looks like that. Who thought that was a good idea? Yeah, Firefox keeps crashing. I tried installing Chromium. All right, we maxed out the power again and it shut down. So Chromium was too much to ask of this thing. I was using too much juice. This thing crashed so hard it changed the screen resolution. Yeah, now it has forgotten that 1024 by 768 exists. So I could try to fix the resolution issue, but sometimes the easiest way to fix a Linux problem is to throw out the hard drive and reinstall Linux. I love Linux, but it's a pain to fix problems like that. So I've actually pulled out the hard drive. I'm going to set that aside since it mostly works. We're going to install a different Linux distro on a different hard drive that I've stuck in here. And that means we'll need to burn a CD like it's 2005. So I've got Q4OS running. It took a while to install. This thing is pretty slow. And it won't even install Chrome here, and I cannot get Firefox to run either. I did get this Conqueror browser to work, so this is kind of an old school browser. Well, at least it can run this cool screensaver, so that's something. Actually, going online with this thing is turning out to be a real headache. Half the websites I try to go to won't work because my computer thinks there's a security issue, and the other half won't work because the website thinks my computer is a security issue. I can still use a few basic websites like Slashdot that are still somewhat backwards compatible with the old internet. And Wikipedia is sort of usable. So this thing is pretty awesome, but like most of my vintage computers, I'm struggling to find a really practical use for it. It's a cool novelty, it looks neat, it's a great military collectible, and it's fun to pull out and actually do something with it, but there's really not that much I can do with it. I'm really spoiled in today's world of fast, responsive computers where a Pentium 3 700 megahertz is just kind of unbearably slow. And sadly, the modern internet is not very compatible with old systems like this, old browsers. Now, there are a couple options for things I could do with this. It would make a great prop for a military-themed or space-themed movie or short video, something like that. This could potentially be turned into what's called a sleeper, where you basically gut the original insides and put a modern system in here. It's got a lot of potential for that, especially with that EMP-shielded case, that Tempest-shielded case, the nice big screen here. It's got a lot of really cool features that go above and beyond even a modern laptop. It also has some downsides over a modern laptop, like the 30-pound weight, the weird power input, other things like that. I also don't know if I really want to turn this into a sleeper. I don't know if I want to gut out the original insides. I kind of like keeping vintage tech like this somewhat original if I can. And again, even if I did pull everything out of here, I don't know if I'd use it too much. Maybe if I went to LAN parties, if I went to more events or something, it would be cool to pull this out and set it up as my laptop, and it would definitely attract a lot of looks. But again, it's not super practical for that, just due to the weight and the power considerations and things of that nature. Also, I'm pretty sure this screen, while it is a large screen, I think the native resolution is still only VGA. It's still just 1024 by 768, and probably can't make it go much bigger than that and still look any good. If anybody out there has suggestions for what to do with this thing, or some really cool software I could run on it, let me know down in the comments, and maybe we'll come back to this in a future video. Until then, I think we're going to wrap this video up. I'm going to set this thing aside. I've got it working basically where I want it. Aside from not having an original power supply, I've got almost everything going. When I started working with this thing, I didn't know if I'd be able to do anything with it. I didn't even know if I'd be able to turn it on because I didn't know exactly how to get power into the thing. But I've hit basically all of my goals with it, which is really cool. Huge thanks again to viewer Rob, who sent me this thing. It is a really cool piece of tech, and I'm glad he was willing to ship it all the way from the UK. So thank you again, Rob. Thank you also to my Patreon supporters who helped me afford my crippling Axeman addiction. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can join my Patreon from the link down below in the description. Check out my other vintage tech reviews for other weird old computers, some of them even older and more obscure than this one, and stay tuned to see what we come up with next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.